Hello everyone, it's me on Like. So the developers had a new blog that they released called Mobian 6. I may be saying it wrong, but yeah. I just wanted to talk about it, go over it, and see what they're talking about. Also, if you're new here, do subscribe. I'm an absolute nut about DARKTIDE, so any sort of content or news they throw out, I'm all over it. But yeah, if you want to support me on Patreon, do check out my Discord. That's the only way to get to it. Anyways, let's get to it. It's fun to create bad guys, and the Mobian 6 are bad to the bone. To me, in games just like novels, the bad guys have got to be interesting, not just cannon fodder. And that's hard to pull off in a game because there are going to be a lot of them coming at you as 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 you dig in and play. And some of them will be cut down quickly if you're doing your job right. It's pretty much impossible to build them as characters or establish any depth of personality because there isn't the space or the time, and you're not going to have the sort of interaction with them you'd get in a novel or a piece of prose? Sorry, I'm saying this word wrong. Pros or prose? You might get to learn about a bad guy motivation or impulses in a book, but in a game like this, they're just going to loom at you out of the dark and try and kill you. So what we've attempted to do instead is build, if not characters, then at least character types. The character is the Mobian 6th itself. The regiment and the soldiers who make it up come in distinctly different flavors, with different looks and different behaviors. So you might not get to know them on a personal basis, but you'll get to know their types, and from that, a picture of Mobian 6th will quickly build up. Okay. So they're not trying to get us... Their idea of a character is simply just the special elite units we find in the game. Just like how in Vermintide 2 you would have these vermin that were different from the rest, and you could tell by looking at them, okay, that's one of the special ones. You have to treat it differently, or you have to approach it more aggressively, or whatever, right? So I'm assuming they're doing what they're kind of like what they're doing in Vermintide 2. So these units are all, when you see them, you know they're going to act very differently than just the cannon fodder that you just run around slaughtering all the time. The question, then, is who are they? Well, they're Imperial Guard, which is to say soldiers of Astra Militarum. I am really sorry if I'm butchering these names. Astra Militarium. I'm sorry. Anyways. They are, or we're, humans just like you and me. They are the sort of conscript troops who in other circumstances would be the heroes of a story, fighting to protect the citizens and unity of the Imperium. They may all be uniform because of their, uniforms, but they are individuals with different skills and strengths and different flaws and weaknesses. There's something chilling and sad about seeing a proud regiment of the militarium filling the role of the enemy. These men were veterans, brave, well-trained, determined, and tough. Raised for the most part on Atoma Prime itself, they were sent away to war and served long tours in the so-called Fringe War, a pacification campaign that was rumbled on for years in the Faroe Worlds at the edge of the Mobian domain. Mobian. Sorry, I'm really bad with these names. There are several Mobian regiments. In fact, but the sixth is the most famous, the most decorated, and the most celebrated back home on Atoma to the citizens of Tertium. Hive. They are heroes. You don't get Lazemen any tougher than the Mobian 6th. Okay. So, the faction we're fighting, these guys, or guys and girls, these are the Imperial soldiers within the campaign that we see, but they're known as the Mobian 6th. And they just, like, turn to chaos or something like that. Okay, that makes sense. That's pretty much the waves of armies we're fighting all the time. That's what will be in Darktide. They have spent their lives, and, in many cases, given their lives, to fight that campaign and keep the people of Atoma and all other populated worlds of the Mobian domain safe and free from invasion. Though it's only a small chunk of the unbelievably vast imperium of man, the domain is a significant tract of space. It's a fiefdom? A fiefdom? Fiefdom of several important worlds, loyal to the throne of Terra, ruled over by the Lord Margrave of Atoma. Think of it like a province or a self-governing state. It pays its tithless and taxes to Terra. It obeys the laws of Terra, and it manufactures vast quantities of goods for the Imperium. It's important. It must not be lost, or invaded, or ever fall to the darkness that lies in the dispute territories it borders. Those territories, which are parts unknown, wild worlds outside the Imperium's remit, are a hotbed of alien xenos, and demonic threat. To the average citizen, Atoma and its sister worlds, the nature of that threat is a mystery. It's just called the Darktide, and boogeyman threat that must be kept at bay. That's why they have the regiment of the Astra Militarium. Okay. So the Darktide is simply... They said demonic threat and Xenos. Does that mean we're gonna see Xenos in Darktide? And now we get to kind of understand Darktide and where the name comes from, right? Darktide is just a place they talk about where it's just so messed up. And they haven't really dealt with it. Okay. Kind of makes sense. The Mobian domain, like all worlds and world groups of the Imperium, is responsible for raising, supporting, and equipping its own armies, which fall under the auspices of the Astra Militarium. The young people recruited to regiments like the 6th have no idea where they're being sent, or what they will face. They are as ignorant as Darktide as any other regular citizen, or they were all citizens themselves. Okay. If I'm piecing this together, right, these Imperial soldiers went to deal with the Darktide, and then they ended up like this. So it's, if anything, all these Imperial soldiers we see, they weren't originally there. That's what I'm getting from this. Like, these special soldiers, they're different. They came before, like, the characters will be playing and try to purge Darktide, I'm assuming? Okay. That's what I'm seeing from this. They quickly learn the galaxy Warhammer 40,000 is not a friendly or safe place. There are brutal horrors out there. Alien creatures, predators, xenos species, monsters, and worse, who want nothing more than to extinguish the fluttering flame of human civilization. Out on the death worlds of the fringe, the Lays men are thrown into the meat grinder and come face to face with unimaginable danger. Their world view changes. They learn the nature of the Darktide and fight it tooth and nail. Sometimes they learn too much. Long tours result in trauma, both physical and psychological. Some are broken by the experience, some are made bitter and resentful. That the grueling combat they experience is genuinely unrecognized back home, because the Imperial Administratium, sorry, I'm really butchering this, Administrum tends to keep all details of the ongoing conflict quiet, so as to not to generate public alarm. There might be a few news broadcasts about great victories, but the rest of the turmoil is screened by propaganda. Some troopers, of course, serve brilliantly and bravely and remain loyal, despite everything they experience, but others fall prey to the insidious touch of the Darktide. They encounter the malevolent effect of the warp, and it changes them. They become literally, in some cases, the very thing they are fighting against. And they fight well. The characters of the regiment comes from a different unit, comes from different units and specializations. They have fierce melee troops who excel at close range and hand-to-hand. They have stormtroop snipers, flame troopers, demolition units, heavy weapon squads. They have everything you'd need in an armed unit if you wanted to take down a world. So the Mobian 6th is a regiment that turned traitor. They have been corrupted by the trauma of their experiences and by polluting effects of the warp. The Guardians of Atoma have turned in vengeance and hatred and spite on the people they guard and have that raised them. Okay. So I was kind of right. These were originally Imperial soldiers that the 6th is this whole regiment we see, and they just went to chaos, I guess, technically. Or maybe they're still not, maybe they're not actually chaos. They're just driven mad, and they're still somewhat Imperial soldiers, but they are against the Order. That's what I'm seeing. They're not really affiliated with chaos, but I guess, like, based on some of the enemies we see enemies that look kind of chaos, like they're all deformed and whatnot, and they're all about plague combat and whatnot. So I'm guessing they're close to chaos, but I'm feeling like the 6th Regiment itself is just a bunch of people who lost their minds and decided they're just gonna turn on everybody, and that's their whole like vibe. Ultimately, they're not just monsters looming out of the dark to kill you. They're highly trained, highly experienced veteran troopers with full military gear. They have been seduced by the creed of the Darktide, and they have come home not simply to kill and exact vengeance, but more poignantly to share the truth they have uncovered. They truly believe they've seen the light, and that the dark ways they have discovered are far better and more liberating than the stagnant rubrics of the Imperium. They want to share that with you, and every living soul on Toma. So there's tragedy here. They absolutely don't think they are evil. They absolutely think they are doing the right thing, and they will absolutely kill you if you try and stop them. You don't get Lazemen any tougher than the Mobian 6th after all. By Dan Abnett. Okay, so yeah, I was kind of right. These aren't really chaosy type of enemies. They're just people who were changed and decided to like go against everybody. But the fact that they think they're doing the right thing, that is very interesting actually. Because when you first look at them, one would assume they're turning to chaos, but they're not really turning to chaos. They're just a bunch of soldiers who have a lot of battle scars and went through a lot of crazy stuff in the Darktide itself. And then they came back as these like raider type troopers who just want to share the truth about how horrible the Darktide really is. And then what we're called, the Misfits or something like that, we're sent in to deal with the Darktide, I think. So these people were sent into the Darktide first. And then we came in to deal with the Darktide, and now these people are against us because of the fact we're trying to destroy the Darktide, and they're trying to share everything they learnt from the Darktide. That's pretty crazy. Honestly, in the beginning, I thought these were Chaos, but no, we're not fighting Chaos. We're fighting Darktide itself. I thought Darktide was just a title, but no, it's an actual place. And that's where we're going within the actual campaign, is the Darktide. And these are all these people were there first. Okay. This also makes me wonder if we're going to see any Xenos in the campaign. That would be pretty cool. Because, I mean, in Vermintide 2, we had the Beastmen, we had the Ratmen, and we had the Northmen. Kind of like Chaos, but they're more like angry Vikings. That's how I see them. They are somewhat dabbled in Chaos, but they're more like angry Vikings is how I see them. But yeah, those angry Vikings are kind of like these guys. The 6th Regiment is kind of like those Vikings. They're somewhat dabbled in a bit of chaos, but most of it is just them hating the empire they were a part of. Okay. Which is really cool. I'm really hoping we do see Xenos. Like, Xenos in this type of game would be fun to just, you know, mow through. Because that would be... So far, what do we have? We have pretty much just this faction I've seen so far. I guess it would be cool to see some Chaos Demons and then some Xenos. Those 2 Xenomorphs, or whatever. I'm sorry. Xenos. But yeah. So far, this is the only actual, like, full-on faction we actually deal with in the game. And that's so far the only one I've seen so far within the game that we actually deal with. Which kind of... I don't know. I'm hoping there's more. It won't be that, you know, the end of the world if there isn't more, because it's the Darktide. But like, the thing is, if the Darktide converted all these soldiers, that means they had to have gone in there to fight something. So there's got to be more than just this faction in Darktide that we have to deal with. Maybe there are, you know, Xenos in the game of Darktide, or maybe there's Chaos Demons that we deal with in the game of Darktide. I'm hoping to see one of those two at least, because they didn't just go into Darktide to fight nothing and then get all these crazy battle scars off of nothing, right? They've had to go in there and fought demons and Xenos. As it says right here. Hot band of alien Xenos, and demonic threat. Right? Which is all in Darktide, which is, of course, a place. That's actually pretty cool. I like the lore so far in Darktide. So we're not fighting chaos off the bat, we're fighting just people who went mad after all the scars they obtained through fighting in Darktide. That's interesting. But yeah, that's been their dev blog on the faction that come out. I hope they release more factions. That's what I really want to see in the future. But yeah, let me know what faction you're hoping to see in Darktide 2. But yeah, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Again, do subscribe. I'm always looking up content like this and trying to find out more about Darktide because it's a really cool game and I'm super hyped for it. But yeah, shout out to Dan Abnett for making this vlog. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.